All right, how are you? So this is my legal argument as to why Toronto's busking bylaw should be struck down as unconstitutional. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees all Canadians the right to the freedom of expression. It's a wonderful thing in a free society to be able to express yourself openly. It's what merits the clash of ideas and lets people exchange thinkings from different perspectives and allows knowledge from all over the world to be compiled, gathered, analyzed, and then learned from. That's the beauty of having the freedom of expression in a society. However, legalism and human nature's, not human nature I should say, the nature of people that are in power to control people that are not in power, this is often done in our society via statutes. And so often, especially in Canadian society is riddled with statutes that go against all of our charter rights. So a perfect example of a statute violating a charter right would be Toronto's busking bylaw. Now, according to the busking bylaw, one must pay the municipality money to then go on the street and express the idea that they are a poor artist struggling to get by. That isn't freedom. The idea that I have to pay 1 cent to express anything erodes that principle completely. Often, some of my friends wonder, why I'm such a stickler about my beliefs in God. Well, that's a funny thing about rights, Our rights are God-given, interestingly enough, because the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, in the preamble to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it acknowledges and recognizes the supremacy of God. And it is, in fact, the acknowledgement of the supremacy of God which built British parliamentarian democracy. Because how did we get to British parliamentarian democracy? Well, we got out of that from the monarchy and the signing of the Magna Carta. And what was the whole principle of the monarchy? Well, the monarchy operated on its right to rule, that it was the righteous ruler, that God had appointed the crown to be the ruler. Now, the signing of the Magna Carta shifted that to kind of where we're almost in this pseudo-free society. And we're almost there a bit. But in this era where most have lost all faith in God, and by most I'm being facetious, the majority of earthlings believe in a God, I'm a stickler for the belief in God because that's where our rights come from. And I guess a philosophical question I would ask to any judge or lawyer practicing in the Canadian system would be this. Do you have a faith in God? Do you have a belief in God? Or do you think that's all nonsense? And if you do think that the belief in God and faith and all those things is utter nonsense, then now I have an ethical question for you. How can you, in good conscience, participate in a system predicated on the belief in a deity that you yourself do not subscribe to? The kind of finality to this thought, I guess, as to why I believe Toronto's busking bylaw is against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is simply this. The municipality of Toronto did not invoke Section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they don't have the jurisdiction to, and they didn't get Parliament to to also enact the notwithstanding clause to then go and limit these freedoms, namely the freedom of expression. Busking is a form of expression. So that's a thought right there. But hey, since I'm using my legal brain to dissect all the other things that I see wrong in society, why don't we just keep going, you know? I think I'll point out something else really interesting about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It says that we have the right to the freedom of thought. We have the right to the freedom of thought, so we can think whatever we want to think about reality, about the nature of reality, right? So then, that's an interesting thing. And then we also have the freedom of religion. We have the freedom to choose any type of religious philosophy or idea, or invent a new one. We have those freedoms guaranteed under our charter. However, what seems very bizarre is how the system of mental health has now gone out and pathologized our thoughts. People that have religious thoughts and philosophical thoughts about God are thought to be irrational. Well, I don't know if you've looked around at anything else in society, but we are an incredibly irrational society. And God is a thing that even I don't really understand, although I've made some bold claims about how well I understand God. Even I can admit I don't fully understand. So we have a system, or a medical system, called psychiatry that has pathologized people's beliefs in God and has decided to label all belief in God as insanity. Now, I grew up as a member of the Latter-day Saint movement, and if you're familiar at all with the history of the Latter-day Saint movement, you're probably not. So, I'll give you the Coles Notes. Once upon a time in the 1800s, there was a young man that had claimed to have strange spiritual experiences that didn't really make sense. And this young man built a religion out of his thinking at the time, and that religion had some great ideas in it. Ideas like not smoking, and maybe easing up on the drinking so much, and maybe eat meat sparingly as opposed to every day. Ideas like, hey, let's all recognize that all of us are part of God, and let's do what we can to serve each other to make the world a better place. For me, that's the bottom line of what it means to be a Mormon. There are a bunch of different philosophical points about every religion and within every religious community. But I will say, it is my opinion that the nation of Canada has seriously inhibited my ability to follow Christ. What do I mean by follow Christ or being a Christian or whatever? I think Catholic people view Jesus as a cop. And that's not how Mormons view Jesus. Mormons view Jesus as a lawyer that's going to argue your case in your defense. Jesus is like your lawyer in the afterlife that's going to say, oh, no. I get what he was trying to do, but he didn't understand. So, that's a whole bunch of weird stuff about spirituality and law and all these things, but this is where the logic for what we today use as law comes from. The idea of justice is it's God's. So it's easier that way. And when a judge is being overseeing a case, the judge is putting himself in God's seat to judge these affairs. And the interesting thing for all you judges to be aware of: make peace with your deaths. Make peace with the judgments that you are making, because you will be accountable for them. Do you ever wonder why pedophiles only get 5 years from Canadian judges? Well, they got to protect their own.